was all about, you know, telling everybody what to do, you know, and when I was a frustrated actor-director early on, when I was 18, 19, 20, I think it was about getting up and saying, oh, no, do it like this, do it like this. And the problem with that is then you get actors doing impressions of you doing the role, and it just never works. It's much more dynamic and interesting if you are keying off their instincts and you're letting the characters grow out of the actor. And in rehearsals, I created framework and then watched for the instincts of the actors, and usually it's just about getting them to follow through on those instincts. I mean, you see an initial impulse and you go, okay, yeah, follow that, this is great, and until it becomes this full-blown, beautiful moment on stage. So, yeah, I'm more and more I see the director's work as coordinator and guide through the process. One of the things that this script does is it happily marries classical and contemporary. And so what we ultimately then started talking about is the fact that if we create this realistic, rugged type pond pool environment, it makes it a little ridiculous for Phaeton to appear with a rubber raft and walk into that space. There's nothing scenically that's giving us the potential for that to happen. So we went back to, I think, what was part of the original design, which is this, as I said, marriage between classical and contemporary. Yes, it should suggest Greece. It should suggest classical Greece, but there should be contemporary elements in it that creates the potential for those two worlds to sometimes collide and sometimes beautifully support each other. I wanted us to come up with some kind of action verb or quality that would be stimulated in us as audience members when we saw them. So in other words, I didn't want audiences to just look at Aphrodite and think, boy, there's a beautiful woman. But I wanted them to look at Aphrodite and I wanted them to fall in love.
There was once a girl like you, named Mira, and she too ignored Aphrodite. There were suitors everywhere, but she was blind to them. Finally, Aphrodite had had enough and seized her with a passion.
So?
The passion for her father.
That isn't true.
It is.
So we wanted the actor and the costume and the scene to draw the audience into these different places emotionally, so that it was, hopefully this production is less of a head experience and more of a heart experience. While most of the play is narration and storytelling, you have actors who are then acting it out. One lesson we learned was that it was deadly if the narration preceded the action, the physical action, because then it just became uninteresting and redundant.
Part one, the mistake. Aphrodite's flying in, Mira's slowly crossing in, and I may add some kind of music here, or there might be a chime or something. But let her get off the ring, and the ring's going to be flying up. Mira's going to be about here. Let her get to center, and that's when we start the next section, which is
Finally,
blind to them.
Blind.
Okay? At that point, you stop with whatever's going on right now, but probably by the time you get there, she's starting these
as we've talked about with the cast, the water is the 13th cast member. And for one of your cast members, maybe your leading actor, not to arrive on the scene until 2 or 3 days before you open is not nearly enough time to create an ensemble. And so there are a lot of things that we learned. We rehearsed the first couple of weeks on dry land up in the rehearsal hall. We pretty much blocked the show, came up with lots of creative ways of presenting the stories and certain imagery, and then we came down into the water and everything changed. The water changed a lot of things, and one of the things that we learned is that not only is it a cast member, but that cast member talks a lot. So as actors would move through the water, it would make noise, splashing, sloshing around, and you have to allow that dialogue to happen. And if you try to speak over it, it's like two actors talking at the same time. So trying to find the rhythm of that cast member, the rhythm of the water, in terms of its sounds, was probably about a 1-week process as we went back through the show and said, okay, you have this line and then this line, and then this actor is going to make this dynamic move, which is going to create this sound, and then the next line comes in after that move is completed, so that you had this give and take between the actors and the water. That was a pretty important lesson to learn.
Then you're going to hear the ball go. You come in, you see it, you see your father. That's all right. So the ball hits, boom. And lights fading, fading.
Metamorphoses draws about every emotion, human emotion, out of you that's possible over the course of these 90 minutes. And then you go away and you sit down and engage your mind and start questioning what just happened to you and what it all means. As people who have worked on this show as cast members and as audience, what I think is happening is that they've all had a very life-affirming experience. This play reminds us what it means to be human, and by the time we walk out the door, we're really glad to be